We are live with Kristen Lueck. Kristen, are you ready to talk?
I'm ready.
Kristen Lueck is the head of Man-Made Music. And at Man-Made Music, Kristen lives to play connect the dots, using Kristen's strategic prowess to draw connections between projects, partners, and creative ideas to spark iconic work and meaningful collaborations. Kristen Lueck, welcome to the talk.
Thank you. And I would say head of business development. I wish
Head of business development. Okay, thanks for the correction.
Yeah.
Little snafu right there on my end. Head of business development. So your talk is called "Why Do Music and Sound Resonate?" And pretty interesting stuff. I know with some of my own musical training, I always think of Wagner and his operas and his leitmotifs, and you don't really talk specifically about that, but it was really very fascinating about the difference between music and sound and really what's going on in movies, a whole bunch of things. Please take us behind the talk, Kristen.
Absolutely. So this talk was a challenge at first. I had to really think about, after 7 years being here at Man-Made Music, how do I explain what we do and why it's so powerful? And the only way I could think to do that was natural for me was to think about music and sound as giving us superpowers. And when I thought more about that, it made a lot of sense to me. So for example, in my talk, once I had that framework of superpowers, I was able to line up, you know what? Sound allows us to shape shift. And what I mean by that, it can augment reality. And we experience that every day when we're commuting to work and put a playlist on, or working out at the gym and put a playlist on to pump us up. We're augmenting what's happening around us with sound. And so I did that for 5 or 6 other types of superpowers. And it gave me a way to just sort of naturally explain something very abstract and complicated.
Yeah, well, you walk out on the stage of your talk and you had the wrong music, so you backed up and you came back on again and they had the wrong music again, and then you backed up and then you came out again. Actually, it wasn't the wrong music. It was the right music, but that was a really kind of effective way. I know with people that I work with in the Get Accepted program, we're always looking for that moment when people can lean in, and I'm listening for that. I was leaning in all the way because you were literally backing up and did three attempts to get on stage, which of course was planned. So was that an original idea that you had from the very beginning, or when did that strike you?
Yeah, that was something I knew I wanted to make it visceral in some way. And, talking about sound, you can only talk about it so much before you just need people to feel it, because that's why it's so powerful. A lot of it is subconscious to us. We don't realize it. And so I wanted to have this moment where people realized how powerful sound was in shaping a perception of me. So, if I walk on to rock and roll music versus hip hop music versus classical music, even though they don't realize it, they're going to be setting up, oh, this talk is serious, or she's maybe cool, or maybe not cool, like super not cool. And even those unconscious decisions in their own minds are setting up their behavior, their mood, and their expectations for the rest of my talk. And so my team and I, thought that would be a great way to try it out. I had never done that before, so I was personally a little afraid and embarrassed to do it, but I'm glad I tried it, and I'm glad it seemed to be a bit impactful.
Well, and it was an effective opener. I mean, I don't know how many people were at your event, but sometimes after speaker number 5 or speaker number 25, some of these speaker number 35, you've really got to demonstrate right from really literally the first step in your case, or maybe the ninth step when you turned around, that, oh, okay, this is going to be an interesting, this is not going to be a lecture. This is going to really be a true branded talk. So I think you absolutely did that.
And I do want to add what was interesting about my experience. I was in Madrid, Spain, and I was speaking to a group of students and professionals, I would say maybe around 200, who spoke obviously both Spanish and English. And I was number 9 out of 10 and only the second English speaker.
Oh, wow.
And so what was interesting was using sound, which is so universal, could still convey that point, even if they didn't understand the language, though they did. But again, music and sound is such a universal language and tool.
Well, and it really is. So in your talk, you say that sound does three things. It creates expectations, it creates associations, and it lets you know whether a story is resolved or not. And I mean, it's as simple as stepping on stage or having your favorite keynote speaker at a conference, and it's like, what do they play as that person is speaking on stage, stepping on stage? Is it pump up the jam music? Is it something else? Is it something a little bit offbeat or silly or quirky? You're right; it absolutely sets the tone.
And, it's Halloween today. And one of the stories I talk about is how in scary films, sound is really impactful, right? To help us with that scare. And what they do in editing, they have to make sure that the sound and the visual cue is not aligned at the same time, because we hear and process our senses at different speeds. And so because we process sound so quickly, if we were to hear the scare before we saw it, it would give it away. And so there's even little things like that where that sound, that thing we process so quickly is telling us a story. And while that's happening in our everyday life, we at Man-Made try to apply that to brands and spaces and television in terms of conveying that message to audiences.
All right. So if I heard that right, so they have to not sync the sound, but actually delay the sound in the case of like a horror movie so that we see the scary thing, react to that, and then maybe there's a scary sound as opposed to smacking us all at once. That's something I never realized.
I believe so, because by the time it'll feel like it's happening at the same time to us, but those milliseconds matter.
That's really interesting, because it's like the speed of light versus the speed of sound. The speed of sound is much slower than the speed of light. So that's so counterintuitive. What an interesting thing.
I could be wrong, though.
Okay.
Actually, yeah. But things like that definitely are happening in film. And of course, we know as we hear scores that guide us on knowing that this character may not be trustworthy, but we don't know why. And a lot of it has to do with what we're hearing at that time. Or why are we feeling happy, or why are we feeling a sense of resolution? Theme parks do that a lot too. I think I mentioned just the idea of even walking through Disney or other theme parks, that just by what you're hearing in the soundtrack lets you know there's a story happening here to unravel, or the story's over, march along, move on out. There's nothing left to experience.
Now, you mentioned in your talk that sometimes, not sometimes, but they did a little study and they swapped out film music or underscores, and they completely validated the effect that it had to study, and they researched it, and they found all kinds of ways that we can manipulate ourselves through through underlying sound. So that's not such a nice word, but that's essentially we can control and change things. So I mean, not to kind of be a leading question, but how would you reframe that, if there's a better way to reframe that? And then what's kind of the impact of that, Kristen?
Yeah, I think from that study, I think it was Tufts University did that study, and they found that, knowing that you can create associations to things that aren't necessarily implied explicitly is a powerful tool, in the sense that when you know your audience and you know how you want them to feel, and maybe that's not always good. Maybe there's situations where you want them to feel uncomfortable or scared, but maybe you want them to feel loyalty or a sense of trust, that you can use music and sound to elicit those feelings subconsciously or consciously. And so while I wouldn't say manipulation, I think it's another tool. Again, we don't live in a world without our other senses visually, or touch or things like that. But it's a tool that can heighten and elicit certain feelings and expectations when used strategically. Because the other thing I say too is, whether you're strategic about it or not, this is happening. So it's not like it's off and then you decide to turn it on. As a brand or as a person, you might as well be strategic about how you surround yourself with sound. And we actually, I don't think I mentioned it, but we call it sonic humanism, which is the idea that the right music and sound can make life richer and simpler. If we're being proactive and strategic about that, whether again, that's for fun or even for ICU rooms in hospitals, things of that nature.
Well, and you mentioned a bit about brands, and they have little really short little sounds that I've noticed. It's very subtle, but you'll watch a Honda commercial and have that da da
Yes.
little minor third, I think it is, and they just put that right at the beginning, maybe right at the end, and it just kind of
Yes.
it's really almost subliminal, because you're not thinking about it, but it really does cue that up. What do you have any idea the magnitude of the impact that actually has, measured in, I don't know, advertising revenue or profits or something like that?
Sure. No, that's a great question. I don't have the specific numbers in front of me, but I know, at least for the work we've done with our brands, creating what we call these sonic identity systems or sonic branding for them, that you can, we have something called sonic pulse research. And so we can actually measure the emotional appeal of the sound, if there has been a shift in brand perception, and some other things of that nature. And we've actually seen lifts between 30 and 40% in terms of emotional appeal positively towards a brand once they've had this consistent use of music and sound. And we often see brands investing so much money in their visual identity system, their color palette, where it should show up, why it should never be purple, why it should never be used here or in this texture. And what we're creating is that strategy and that sound environment in this very similar way. Not in some cases, it's yes, these 3 notes, use them over and over and over again to gain attribution. And in fact, one of our clients, AT&T, I think in the first 6 to 8 months of it being on air, raised their brand attribution and association by a staggering percent. I mean, almost recognized as much as the NBC chimes, which have been around since the radio days. So
NBC.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
what we're talking about. Sorry, everybody, but
exactly.
just to drive that home.
So it's a powerful tool for attribution and association if a brand or a product can use it consistently.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm not affiliated with TED in any way, but before you watch those videos, they have a really, I mean, that little raindrop sound comes in, and the whole warm little envelope under that, and it really does kind of prime you for hopefully good things to come. Actually, TED Talks are always pretty amazing. Big TED, so.
Yeah, and actually, that's a great point. And as we move into an era of audio first interactions, like podcasts or Alexa voice skills or other kind of voice commanded environments, sound is going to play a major role for brands to get that credit. Imagine listening to the TED podcasts or asking for one on your smart speaker. When you hear that drop, you're so used to seeing it matched, to the visuals, but now you're accustomed to hear it only and still get that same attribution and know, okay, I can trust this. This is coming from TED or whatever it may be. But we're seeing brands realize to get credit for experience, they need to have that audio mark now that there's no more visual experiences or they're lessening.
Yeah. Well, how do we go about beginning that process? Because I know it's, that's going to be an interesting conversation. I almost want to, if you can briefly answer that, then I want to swing back and maybe record a bonus segment about that, because I think that's going to be not a very simple answer. But give me the simple answer, and then if Kristen has availability, we'll record a bonus session on that.
Sure. To get started, first thing I would say is take stock of your current landscape. So do an audit of your current ecosystem. What are your touch points of your product or your brand or your experience? And how does music and sound currently play a role? Sort of just the facts. It could be there's nothing there. It could be we use stock music, we license it. It could be I use my own personal playlist to open up this retail store. Whatever it may be, I would say take stock of what's currently happening in a very kind of real way. I would also think about where are your priorities going into the next year or the next few months. Is it advertising? Is it voice skills? Is it digital content on YouTube? Think about where are the touch points where I'm really going to want my audience to show up and where I want to invest for Sonic to play a role. I would also think about your brand personality and attributes, because what we do is not create new brand strategy. It's actually a translation. So as you think about who you are or where you want to go, are you human, open, and passionate, as most people are? Are you whatever that language is, to make sure you're solidified and understand the brand or product personality. And with those types of things, understanding your current environment, understanding your brand as it stands or wants to go, and also understanding your audience, where you want them to show up and interact with you. That's a great groundwork for
Oh my, we just froze.
and those attributes.
Okay, if you can go back to the beginning of that sentence, Kristen, we just froze for like a good 10 seconds.
Sure.
Sorry about
that. Which one?
It was a long one. There was like 4 things to do.
I'll do it again. I'll just start it. Right. Okay.
Well, and actually what we'll do is we'll pivot over to the Blitz round, and then we'll do kind of a more extensive bonus section if that works for you. And my Talk Ninja is going to chop all this up all nice for us. So we don't have to worry. All you guys on Facebook live right now, this is the kind of day, the kind of morning it's been. And I'm just so thrilled to be able to connect with Kristen and Stephen earlier, and all the amazing guests we have. So we've been enjoying this conversation with Kristen Lueck. She is the head of development at Man Made Music, and we've been talking about why music and sound resonates. And we're going to pivot over to you, Talk Universe. We're going to talk about the preparation and performance of her talk in just a moment in the Blitz round. And we are here in the Blitz round with Kristen Lueck. We are going to talk about different preparation and performance elements. I'm going to ask her a series of either or questions. Kristen, are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. First question. Were you invited to speak or did you apply?
I was invited.
Are you a memorizer, an improviser, or a blender?
I was a memorizer.
Mm-hmm. How did that work for you?
I memorized about 80%, so it was difficult, but I got through it.
that last 20%. Okay.
It slipped away, but I made it through.
It slipped. Well, you got through it. I couldn't tell. It's all good, but I mean, what would you do differently next time?
Ooh, good question. I would not have played that video. I tried to play a video and there was technical difficulties, so I would have probably not done that.
Well, you know what? And that's something I noticed that. And in my own talk, I had some slide issues where a lot of the slides at the beginning, it never made the edit. So, so I would second for anyone listening, be really, really careful with slides at all.
Yeah.
Because clickers or videos that you're kind of hinging on or want to show, unless you know that the production people there are going to be just absolutely amazing, really think twice about that. So I did notice that. Anything else that you'd say about that, Kristen?
Yeah, and actually, I never rehearsed it. So me on that stage was me doing it for the very first time, the whole way through. And so I would recommend rehearsing.
And for not that you fooled me, because the average person would not look like it was prepared. Maybe it was the stroll on stage. Maybe it was, kind of that was really, really effective in kind of jarring us out of that mode. Yeah. But hey,
here's the Easter egg. There's a moment where I drop my head and look at the floor, and that's the moment where I lost the 20%. It felt like 5 minutes. It felt like I stared at the floor for 5 minutes. And I just remember thinking, Kristen, when you raise your head, you have to finish. Like, you have to say something. And so in the video, I think it's like half a second. But in my mind, it was like 5 minutes of forgetfulness. Yeah.
Well, it's like your whole life just flashes in microseconds before your eyes. And then you look up and then you land the plane. So,
yeah.
What were your thoughts? I mean, not to pry too deep in that, but now that we know the backstory, what were your thoughts after, you landed the plane, you walked off stage, did you posture that? Did you frame it in your mind? What did you do?
When it was over, I was surprised how life just went on, because it was such a big deal in the lead up to it. And I was very busy. I was attending conferences. I was doing this in the cracks of my life and of work. And so it was a heaviness in a good way, but like a heavy pressure. And when it was over, I remember just thinking, oh, like, that's it. Like, life goes on. Everything's still running. And even though my video didn't work, it didn't really matter. It was just sort of on to the next speaker, and I was done. And so I remember being very thankful it was over, but also surprised how it wasn't a mountain. It was a hill, and I made it into a mountain.
Well, we've been enjoying the Blitz round with Kristen Lueck. Her talk is called "Why Do Music and Sound Resonate?" You can watch that on YouTube. You can type it in, or you can go to bethetalk.com, our show notes page. We will have a link to that video, and you can see the Easter egg and all of the stuff in the video that didn't quite make it within the video. Some of the things that we talked about. You can also go to Kristen's website at manmademusic.com, manmademusic.com. And we'll be back in just a moment with Kristen Lueck and the final word of advice. And we're back. It's time for the final word of advice.
My advice for anyone giving a TEDx talk is to really use it as a chance to find your voice on that topic. Like, this is a very rare opportunity where you get to speak not from your company or from any other agenda, but personally your own idea. And so use that as a great tool and resource to find your own voice.
Kristen Lueck, thank you so much for coming on the talk today and sharing your wisdom with Talk Universe.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right. Actually, I'm going to just keep the recorder rolling. We're going to go back and do that bonus session a little bit. So I'm going to lead right back in. Hey, everybody, welcome to Be the Talk. This is a bonus session with Kristen Lueck. We were running a little bit long on that last segment with Kristen. It was a great interview, and she's back to give us a little bit more detail about maybe you oversee a startup, maybe you are a CEO, maybe you're an executive, maybe you're a branding expert, maybe you run some kind of an agency, and this whole sonic branding, sonic templating, my words, not necessarily Kristen's, but this is maybe something that you've heard about. And what I wanted to do was see if Kristen would be willing to kind of give us a little bit of a more robust, maybe a 5-minute, how to really get started, how to really research, how to know when it's worth making that investment, or how to just be thinking along those lines. So I've given Kristen about 8 questions in one. I'll just turn it over to her, and with my thanks for being willing to come back.
Yeah, of course. So yeah, if you're considering a sonic identity system, which again is analogous to a visual identity system for a brand or an experience, but made up of music and sound strategy, there's a couple things I would recommend you think about. One of them is thinking about your current landscape, your current environment. So as a brand or an experience, what are the touch points that you show up at? And what is the sound and music being used there? So it could be you find out you're using stock music in certain areas of digital content. Maybe you do or you don't already have a note or a 3-note melody at the end of your spots, but maybe you don't know where it came from or what it means. Maybe the IVR call center hasn't been checked in many, many years, but is playing some tunes that have nothing to do with your current brand or brand positioning. So take stock of your current sonic landscape and understand where the content is coming from and what it's conveying to your audiences. And if it's a broken landscape, if they call in for help, what they're hearing there is different in tone and vibe than when they walk into the retail store. The next would be
No, that's great. Now, breath on my end. So Lester, edit that piece out. Didn't mean to do that. Kristen, what's the next part of developing a sonic identity strategy?
Sure. The next is to really have an ambassador within the organization. So have that person, whether it's yourself or someone on the brand team or a partner agency, really be the one to hold the candle to all this information they're finding out, because it needs to be moved through an organization, especially because what we're creating is not at the campaign level, it's at the brand level, similar again to a visual logo. So understanding who is going to be moving it through the organization. I'd also consider your touch points of main investment as we again move into voice-led activations, podcasts, Alexa skills, things of this nature, and more audiences are going to be purchasing using their voice, how does your brand get credit for providing that experience or being the chosen person or brand they interact with? A sound could help convey that. And so if you realize you're moving into that space more and more, I think it's a good time to consider an identity system. Also, if you do have an existing mnemonic or logo, it's important to sure it has meaning. And so maybe you don't know if it has meaning or equity. We can do research on that. Maybe take time to research the attribution, if it's resonating with audiences, and if it's conveying the right appeal. So I think the groundwork is really understanding where you currently are, because the next step is then understanding the landscape as a whole. How are your competitors moving? What are they doing? What does it mean to you? Because you don't want to sound like them either. And so you start sort of building these layers on top to understand what should you sound like and where should it show up. And we're, happy to help.
Yeah, well, you can find out more about Kristen's company at manmademusic.com. And it's just amazing how all the different things that we can do to differentiate ourselves, how subtle it is. And sometimes the more subtle it is, the more powerful it is. So thanks so much for coming on. And what's your final word of advice for companies that are realizing, hey, we need to do something in that space?
Yeah, I would just say, again, whether you're strategic about how you show up or not in music and sound, it's happening. So you might as well be strategic about how you're experienced.
All right, Kristen Lueck, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your wisdom in this bonus round.
Thank you.
All right, great session. Awesome.
Thank you very much.
I love this podcast because I get all kinds of thousands and thousands of free consulting advice from all my guests.
Yeah,
it's so brilliant.
Well, thank you so much for asking or connecting on LinkedIn.
Yeah. Well, you're welcome. So now my last request for you, we've got a couple of our next guests joining us, and I've got this really neat little gadget where I'm going to briefly bring them onto the stage here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to duck out for just a moment. And I would love for you, as our newest Talk alumni, to give them, Elatia and Jody, advice on dealing with me. And we are on Facebook Live right now, so just everybody be aware of that. I am going to be right back in a moment. I'm going to show myself out to the green room, and I will be right back presently. And feel free to share your expert advice as our newest Talk alumni.
Okay. Hey, I'm Kristen.
Gorgeous. Hi, Elatia. How are you?
Good. Do you have any questions?
No, not really. I do interviews and stuff like this.
Yeah.
Fairly frequently, and I am interested though in what you were talking about in terms of using music. I just caught the very tail end of what you were talking about, and in fact, I just left a conversation where we were talking about the importance of. We were talking about body tuning, actually.
Oh yeah.
Some of the work done around that, but the importance of the vibration, the tone, and what it is that we bring to the world.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredible how powerful something so quote unquote noticeable is in our world. And until you come conscious to it, after I talk to people about music and sound, they come back, they're like, oh my gosh, the city is so more loud, or these commercials. Yeah. So I noticed that jingle, or I noticed that sound. And it's like, yeah,
absolutely.
But yeah, happy to talk anytime too. I think I have your name right on the invitee list. And
I think I'd love to hear more about the work that you're doing.
Yeah.
How did you get involved in it?
I fell into it. I have an entertainment background, so I worked in television and in film. And this is an interesting intersection of entertainment, because we do TV themes like HBO Entertainment Tonight, but we also provide that branded strategy work. So it's sort of an interesting intersection.
Yeah,
but I was referred, so I just came as a referral of someone to this company and kind of loved it. I've been here 7 years. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, it's phenomenal. Yeah, I mean the work that I do now is focused around the future of work and helping people bridge the gap between the experience in life that they're having today and what's coming thanks to the impact of technology. And all of these kinds of tools, music,
Yeah.
how we talk about ourselves, what's here, what's present, are critically important in helping build that bridge and close that gap for folks.
Totally.
Hey, well, thanks for covering for me, Kristen. And I'm ready for another 90-minute recording session at this point. I am so excited. And congratulations to everybody for making it on. I know there were some email deliverability issues, especially with the first segment. So there's a little bit of airtime in our Facebook Live today. So a good way to get around that is just the minute mark and find out where your interview is. If you are in, I'll just say this to everybody, if you are in Kristen's fan club, if you are in Elatia's fan club, if you are in Carol's fan club, if you are in Jody, who I saw a moment ago in the green room, her fan club, you can be like the creepy kid on The Shining and do this, but do it over the share button, because this podcast is all about helping Elatia, Kristen, Carol, Jody, and all the other guests that I've had extend the impact of their talk. And we know that Facebook is just gonna throttle back unless you share. So the power is in your hands. Carol, I'm going to bring you up here just to say hi. Make sure your mic is working as well. Carol, are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
All right. We can hear you just great. I just love this. I call it like the Brady Bunch view. You know, you can.
I don't know why it's like that.
It's wonderful.
It was fine just a minute ago, then it just went like this. I don't know what happened.
Yeah, I don't know why. I didn't click it that way, but that was like the other way. Go figure. So I'm moving it all around. Okay. Elatia, we're going to jump on the recorder with you since I saw you first. Hopefully we see Jody back because she is up on deck. And Kristen, you're welcome to stick around and enjoy or do what you need to do. And Carol, you are on deck as well. So we're going to jump right on here. And thank you again, Kristen, for amazing content here.
Thank you.
All right. So now we are, this is just a big Facebook Live session, and this is my podcast recorder. Everybody wants to know, is this like do you interview 5 people at the same time, or do you? No, I do individual. It's like if Jimmy Fallon or Jimmy Kimmel did this. So we're going to have like a recording inside of a broadcast.
Oh, yeah.
That's kind of how we do it. It reminds me of like a DiCaprio movie about dreaming.
Yeah,
it kind of does. And isn't that great? Elatia, am I saying your name correctly? Elatia Abate?
Abate, yes.
Abate. Okay. Yeah. Elatia Abate. And let's see here. I've got your bio right here. Okay, so that's always my first question.
Oh, I love it. Who am I? Why am I here?
Yeah. Well, and here's the bio that I got. Elatia Abate is a true visionary and pioneer, having devoted her life to living on the edge of the future of work. She is an entrepreneur and works with companies and governments to solve the challenges of the future. And I have a LinkedIn link. Is that the best link for you? No personal website?
Yeah,
LinkedIn?
that's the best link. Yes, because really, if you need to find me on my website to talk about the future of work, we've already kind of moved past that. WhatsApp is the game. Telegram.
Well, cool. And let's see here. Pioneering the future of work. Yeah, that's about all we need right there. So any questions before I hit the big button here?
No, I'm ready to rock. I'm ready to rock and roll. I'm excited to dive in with you.
Rock and roll. Here we go. Actually, let's do this. If you can give me a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
We're great. In 3, 2. We are live with Elatia Abate. Elatia, are you ready to talk?
I am so ready to talk. I can't wait to talk with you. Let's get it.
Elatia Abate is a true visionary and pioneer, having devoted her life to living on the edge of the future of work. Elatia is an entrepreneur, and she works with companies and governments to solve the challenges of the future. Elatia Abate, welcome to the talk.
Thank you so much for having me here. I'm so excited.
Yeah, well, your talk is called "Pioneering the Future of Work." I love the visual right at the beginning. I'm leaning in right away because you are in front of basically a giant lockbox with all your stuff in it, and you were about to go into some of the worst horror travel stories that I've ever heard. So please take us behind the talk.
Yeah, exactly. So essentially, what I decided to do after years, so I think backing up just a hot minute, I quit the corporate world 5 years ago after a long career in HR, mostly in running global recruiting for big companies. And I got tired of meeting people who were fabulous, but not particularly excited about the work that they were doing. So I quit the corporate world in order to help people be happier at work and spent some years in the market looking at this. And then I began to notice these macro trends that had me really questioning, what are we going to do with all the people when technology hits with the shifting workforce population, then when we have an economic crash. So I went kind of mad scientist, and I decided to put everything that I own into storage and live out of a carry-on suitcase for a year to figure out pushing my own life to an extreme of absolute uncertainty, and then talking with people who are creating the things that impact the future of work to figure out in search for answers to the question, how will we empower the people and what will we do with all the people?
Well, uncertainty is the name of the game because you found yourself. It was almost like a Talking Heads song. You're like, how did I get here? Where's my purse? Where's my wallet? Where's my money? Where's my ID? And you basically had a moment of extreme panic, which you were able, spoiler alert, you were able to sidestep by a little bit of present thinking and a little bit of help from your friends. So
yeah.
Go take us there. That was huge.
Yeah, so it was day 47 of this journey. I decided to spend a year, and I boarded a plane in Los Angeles, California, flew 3,000 miles, walked off the plane in Miami, and went up to the rental car counter. And I'm traveling with a carry-on suitcase and an enormous tote bag full of stuff because it's a year. And I walk up to the rental car counter and I'm looking for my wallet to be able to give them my driver's license so I could get the car, and I'm not seeing the wallet. At first, I think, I have so much crap in here, it's probably just underneath something, let me step away. But as I have extricated all of the things in this bag, and I get to the bottom of the bag and I have no wallet and no driver's license and no credit card, my stomach sank. I was in tears and really thinking, what did I do to my life? Why did I decide to do this? What am I going to do? This is right at the beginning of this journey. And though, which was really the moment, one of the many moments that I had where it's like, okay, I can allow the circumstances around me to control what I do, or I can decide that I am going to be the boss of what's going on here. I'm going to step into the captain's seat and figure out what I can create. And so with that, I called a friend who lived in Miami who said, go meet me here. I'll come pick you up. I was able to order credit cards. He gave me all the cash that he had, and there I was off on my way.
And I think this is beautiful because you took this trip, Elatia, to figure out what I explore this on the podcast with several of my guests. It's like when this next wave comes of augmented reality or artificial reality or intelligence or whatever it is, it's like how do thinking people, how do we overcome that and become, remain relevant and maybe move up the Maslow's hierarchy of needs and self-actualize a little bit more and make a little bit more money instead of being dependent on maybe a political party or platform or politician or what somebody else is going to do, and basically surrender our efficacy and our ability. And I love that picture of you going around the world to find the answers of those questions, not having what you need to take the next step, having all the overwhelm, having all the blame, shame, all of that coming at you. And then you step up and you say, hey, we're not going there. I'm the captain of this ship. What can I do? And you figured it out. I just think that's so meta and so ironic in a good way. And congratulations for showing us kind of the way through that metaphor of your experience.
Thank you so much. And that's exactly why I put myself into the mix, because I figured I'm a pretty adventurous person anyway. And so traveling or doing interviews or something, I would learn stuff, but I wouldn't have that visceral experience of fear and uncertainty and really needing to gather my own resources to figure a way out. Because now in the work that I do around the future of work, I truly see my role as being both an interpreter. So now that I've kind of been out here on the edge and have learned some things, I can translate what the business model of the future looks like, what the environment of the future looks like, what navigating that is into language that others can use today. And then it's also to be a bridge builder, to help people walk that path so that they don't have to feel that fear, and they can see all of this as the opportunity that it really is, which it is unleashing humanity's potential. And this is the opportunity that we have in our hands right now, if we can see that it's that.
I'm going to ask you a question right now. I'm going to try to postulate it in an appropriate way, but you're a human resources former executive, very high powered. You went around the world to find these answers. I'm kind of on a quest similarly to find these answers, as I mentioned before, just because so many people are giving branded talks about these kinds of things. My question to you, Elatia, is there really any way to sidestep emotional intelligence, being more human, developing that part of ourselves, that present-oriented part of ourselves, and succeed in this world that we're coming to? And I'm not talking about maybe neurodiverse people or people that have a little bit of limitations in that way, but for people that have that capability, but maybe we have a little bit of a fixed mindset or maybe a little rigid or entitled. What's the future look like for us, and how can we kind of break out of that rigidity? I guess it's a little bit of a loaded question, but I think that's the big elephant in the room.
It really is. And so the magic, and this is what I think the magic is. The magic is, thanks to this technology, we get to be more human. We get to connect more with each other. We don't have to spend our time doing mundane tasks and things that don't really matter. And where I see this shift is work will move away from what it has been bastardized to be over years and years and years into tasks and things that we do in exchange for money, when what it was always really meant to be, this notion of working, isn't working, it's creating. And each of us will be freed up to double down on our gifts and bring things into the world through the things that we can naturally create. And there is no getting around the emotional intelligence component of this, and flexing that muscle of fixed mindset is the most important thing, hands down.
Well, we've been enjoying this conversation with Elatia Abate, and what a great answer to kind of tough question. I rolled right down the middle for her. I think that I'm looking forward to maybe continuing this conversation in the future, because there's so much more here. But right now, Talk Universe, it's time about right now, social intelligence. We want to know about what Elatia can say and lead the way for you in the Blitz round in just a moment. We'll be right back.
Beautiful.
And we're back with the Blitz round. I'm about to ask Elatia Abate a series of either or questions related to her talk, so that we Talk Universe can learn and give our next or our first TED Talk.
I love
Elatia,
it.
you ready to go? All
yes,
right.
Ready.
Awesome. First question. Were you invited to speak, or did you apply?
I was invited.
Awesome. Are you a memorizer? Are you an improviser? Or are you a blender?
Blender.
How did that work for you?
Gorgeously. It worked.
Gorgeously.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right. Reverse engineer it for us. Gorgeously.
So
wow.
So the basics are, the way that I create and when I create things that I'm going to speak on, is I go through talking points first. I don't write things out. I figure out the main deliverable, the main things that I want to deliver, the main points that I want to get across. And then I begin to construct anecdotes around them. And so I rehearse in that I know what my talking points are. I have the anecdotes related to them, but oftentimes I'll change in the moment depending on who's listening.
So, well, great to be flexible. What's a tip, a tool, or a technique that helped you?
Rehearsal, rehearsal, rehearsal. Rehearsal, rehearsal, rehearsal. And if I can slide a second one in there, get yourself a coach. Get yourself a powerful speech coach, because this is a global stage. And if you get the opportunity to be here, you want to make sure that you're giving yourself the greatest opportunity possible to create some massive impact.
Yeah, absolutely. What was the size of your particular event?
The size of the event, there were, I believe there were about 10 speakers total, and there were several hundred people in the audience.
Wow. So, I mean, it's important to have that coach, because it's going to be on video, and that's going to be that really has the power to propel your brand, especially if your brand is stage ready.
Yes.
There's nothing magical about the letters, but if your brand is stage ready and you go up there, and it can magnify the impact, and then you get invited on other podcasts like this one. Not too many of these, but it can really do amazing things for your brand. Elatia, were you an opener? Were you a closer, or were you in between?
I also in between. I was a closer of the first half. We divided it into two acts, and I closed the first act.
What fellow advice do you have for fellow closers?
Bring yourself. Bring yourself. And so many of the talks in the preparation, there's a Ben Zander in his book, The Art of Possibility, talks about this moment or professionally virtuous musicians moving beyond technically excellent into a space of virtuoso means you've got to bring yourself with all your flaws and all your wonderfulness, and bring the magic.
No, that's a beautiful analogy, because I'm talking to performing artists all day today, it seems. But I mean, there's something, if somebody's technically perfect, it's really a circus. As pretty as the music is, when they hit all the right notes and that's all they do, that's just great, but it's a circus. And then people show up to try to listen. Oh, I think I heard him miss a note or something. Yeah. Somebody when you really bring all of you, then it's a transcendent spiritual experience. And maybe you've had the experience of being in an audience and hearing that. I've actually heard someone real life, I remember, weeping in a very quiet, it was a Liszt piano sonata or something, 40-minute piece. In the middle, a woman just weeping alongside, and it was real. So, I mean, just a little bit of an interesting thing that you mentioned, and I absolutely appreciate. Here's the cut for time question. What was the most painful part that you had to cut out?
Oh, the most painful part that I had to cut out of the speech was the second biggest story around this impact of captain versus captive. When I found myself in San Francisco, this was day, I think 90 something. I found myself in San Francisco. I had gotten off of a plane and was going to find a place to stay that evening the same way that I did usually, which was Airbnb, hotel tonight, or friends and family. Unbeknownst to me, in San Francisco, there was a Google conference, a baseball game, and several other things going on. And I once again found myself in that situation of, what did I do to my life? This is a disaster.
No room at the inn.
Yeah, because I can't. So many people ask me now, so what do I need to learn? What's the most important thing to take out of this as we face the future of work? And I can't stress enough this piece of mindset. And the mindset boils down to when whatever it is hitting the fan, what's my stance going to be? Am I going to allow it to beat me down, or am I going to stand up and figure this out and get myself going?
Well, we've been enjoying the Blitz Round with Elatia Abate. Her talk is called Pioneering the Future of Work. And if you want to see that talk, you can type it into YouTube, or you can go to our show notes page at bethetalk.com. You can also check out Elatia's LinkedIn page, and we'll have a link to her LinkedIn profile at that show notes page. We will be right back with Elatia Abate's final word of advice in just a moment. And we're back with Elatia Abate. What is your final word of advice?
The final word of advice that I have for you is enjoy. Enjoy. This is an opportunity to share yourself, to share your experience, and to share something on a platform that can positively impact billions of people. And how cool is that?
How cool is that? Elatia Abate, thank you so much for coming on the talk today and sharing your wisdom with Talk Universe.
Thanks so much for having me. This is great.
All right, that's a wrap.
Thank you.
Man, that was fun.
This was gorgeous. Thank you so much for the invitation.
Yeah, love the energy, and I'll reach back out to you afterward because I'm getting all kinds of ideas of interesting little bunny trails and things like that. And it's so frustrating with a little 15-minute format like that. But love to hear.
That's good news, though. It means,
it is good news.
More fun.
It is good news. So we're going to say hi to Jody and hello again to Carol, and I'm going to let you share your advice with them about what they're in for here in a couple of minutes.
Hi, Elatia.
Nice to see you. Nice to meet you. So excited to join this with you. And I don't know if you've been listening to our conversation here as we've been moving on, but the magic is bringing yourself. I think that's the most important thing in all of this. So as a recovering perfectionist, I used to need to know all the right things and say the right words. And in contrast to what I do now for my speeches, I used to write down every word and basically read a piece of paper. And I find so much now that the magic really comes in bringing yourself.
Very nice. I enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thanks for being here. I can't wait to learn from you.
Well, this is going to be great because everyone in this segment is dealing with like workplace expertise issues and whatnot. So this is just really, I mean, it's so interesting when I have clusters of guests and they're all hitting, 3 or 4 different angles of the same thing. This is going to be really, really wonderful. I thought I trademarked that term, Elatia, recovering perfectionist. I gave a spontaneous speech in a room after a very stressful day that we had all come out of very successfully. And I said, hello, my name is Nathan, and I'm a recovering perfectionist. And that just kind of laid it all out. So anyway, I love it. I've had several people profess to be recovering perfectionists on the show, and it's just awesome. So good stuff. So what I'm going to do is escort Elatia and Jody back to the green room over here and welcome Carol. And if you can kind of adjust your webcam or your laptop so that you're growing there you go.
Yeah, I don't know why this is doing that. And I'm on
it might be gravity or whatever. Actually, if you could tweak it just a little bit more. Just a little bit more, and when you lean back, then you kind of shrink.
When I kind of shrink
this has been a great year for women, and I'm so happy about that. And I just have this weird paranoid feeling when I'm doing Be the Talk because there's a split screen. I want to make sure that I'm equal sitting with especially all my female guests and my male guests too, but that's just a strange little paranoid piece. What we're going to do, we're going to switch places, and I'm going to escort you to the green room. I'm going to escort myself back out, and I want you to be on the right, and I'm going to be on the left. And I don't even know that you can see that, but I'm going to do the switcheroo.
Okay.
Here we are, and now I'm on the left, and you are on the right, and there we go. Let's see here. Okay, and then we have. All right, Carol, the confidence factor for women. Carol Sankar .com. Am I saying your name correctly, Carol?
Yeah.
CarolSankar.com, Sankar. Carol Sankar is a high-level business consultant and the founder of a global executive leadership firm focused on diversity and inclusion initiatives for high-level women. Carol has been featured at Forbes, Inc., Entrepreneur, and Fast company. All right. Any questions for me?
No, I think I understand. I got everything.
You got it. You see how this all works.
Yeah.
Good deal. Well, hey, I am looking forward to this. We are going to be live in 3, 2. We are live with Carol Sankar. Carol, are you ready to talk?
I'm ready.
Carol Sankar is a high-level business consultant and the founder of a global executive leadership firm focused on diversity and inclusion initiatives for high-level women. Carol has been featured at Forbes, Inc., Entrepreneur, and Fast Company magazines. Carol Sankar, welcome to the talk.
Thank you for having me. I'm honored.
Well, your talk is called The Confidence Factor for Women. And you had been coaching and mentoring other women for, I think, about 90 days. And the joke at the office, from what you said, was that everyone else apparently was coaching women, but you weren't coaching any women. And it opened your eyes to all kinds of unique issues that women face in business, as well as some really interesting solutions. So please, Carol, take us behind the talk.
Sure. So I spent a lot of time in real estate, really. That's kind of how this whole journey came about. And it becomes ironic that you become immune to not seeing women in rooms. I had become immune to the fact that I had never worked with Anne or Jessica or Barbara. I had worked with Bob and Matt and Tim. So I just became very immune to uh, being in gender normative rooms with men. And subsequently, it used to be a joke that would go around the office, you don't really work with a lot of women, do you? But the men did. And so I really was a little bit afraid of figuring out, is it that I have my own biases in the real estate industry? Do I have my own biases that I just don't want to address? And so I came upon this thing that it really wasn't intended to be the confidence factor. It came to be, let's see how I would work with women and what women really needed. And at first we created an incubator that was supposed to last for just a little under 90 days, where we were going to figure out what issues women were having within leadership, within high level leadership, how to raise $1 million rounds and how to be able to go out here and pitch investors. We were just going to do that for a few days. And I started to see all of this fear and redaction when it came to, women being in conference rooms. They would play so very confidently in front of me, but then when it was time to be in front of certain situations, they'd redact, they'd mute their voice, their posture would change. And I'm noting everything down. I'm not a researcher. I'm just noting everything down. I'm like, this is really not an issue of opportunity. This is an issue with confidence. Because at this time, Lean In had already started. So we already heard, Sheryl Sandberg talking about Lean In. But I was realizing women were leaning in. It's just that when they got to the table, a lot changed. And so just looking at how women became fearful started me to really go into this journey of creating the confidence factor and just learning what women were dealing with, and what issues they were coming up and facing against, and what self-sabotaging behaviors they were coming up against. Because even though I had I do have some advantages. I am the daughter of a Wall Street executive, so I kind of had the upper hand where it was like, get in this room because that's the room you got to be in. However, if you didn't have a mother like mine, it was, if you didn't have that kind of experience where from a very early age I was already on Wall Street, how were you going to be able to get into gender normative situations? So that's how I created the confidence factor.
Well, and this is very interesting because there's a lot of my perspective, there's a lot of rightful attention right now, especially about inequality and advantages and trying to really level the playing field as best as we can. And I love this because you're also saying, hey, it might not only be an inequality issue, it might be as simple, some of that, as just a confidence and self-esteem and self-efficacy issue. And what a great message, because not to take away from the things that we need to be looking at, but isn't it so much simpler to just give people confidence and to incorporate that into your curriculum, into your mode, into whatever you're doing day in, day out?
Yeah, I mean, it's sometimes I think we don't recognize the role that confidence plays. I always make this joke, and I know it's not funny. It's a little corny in its own way. But do you want a fearful doctor operating on your heart? You're having a heart attack. Do you want someone that's trembling and say, I don't think I can do this? You want that at that moment. I think that we sometimes may be operated on by a doctor who might be fearful, but as long as they don't say it, it's okay. We can get away with it as long as you don't tell me I don't have the confidence to operate on you right now. So
it's like that oops word. You don't ever want to hear that word oops from your doctor. Yeah.
Like, that's not the moment we want to hear it. So my whole analysis and my thesis for creating the confidence factor was to give women the amount of support that they needed to go into negotiations, to negotiate their salary, to seek higher level careers, to start that multi-million-dollar businesses, to really go out here and do big things in the world, because I believe that women, we are the game changers, but we have to be able to support women to do bigger things. And sometimes the thing that is in our own way is what we believe about ourselves. Not only that like you said, there is inequality out here, but sometimes some of that inequality are the labels and the things that we've allowed ourselves to believe about ourselves.
Carol, we just enjoyed a segment that I recorded right before this segment right now, and we touched on this issue of the world that we're going into that has all these augmented reality and intelligence, and the world is shifting, and the jobs and all of these sorts of things are moving towards really fulfilling our unique callings and doing so in a very high level, self-actualizing way. And the way that really plays into what we're talking about right now is that confidence is everything. I mean, it's in some ways easier to do almost a mechanized job, or a job that might be outsourced or automated in 5 or 10 years. It's almost easier to do that and feel like you're being responsible and doing what's required of you, rather than the sometimes extreme confidence that it takes to really pioneer out, find your niche, stand in your uniqueness, not take no for an answer sometimes, be correctable, be, all of these things. What is your take on that? What's the role? Why is this so important, in addition to some of the reasons that I might have shared? What's your take on that?
I think the world is changing completely. And, we're seeing a resurgence of people wanting to be on their own and on their own terms. And so what that will take is we have to become master pitchers. In other words, we have to be able to go out here and pitch business. We have to be able to go out here and explain ourselves. Gone are the days of just a resume you can put through a fax machine and then somebody hires you based on a resume. Everybody's looking at your LinkedIn profile. Are you correctively explaining yourself on your LinkedIn profile, on your website? Are you able to relay a level of confidence within the way you express and the effectiveness of expressing yourself? So I believe the confidence is a necessity, and it's something that I think, especially, I believe I'm going to be 22 for the rest of my life. So if we could turn back my clock just about 6 months ago when I was 21 and a half.
No, seriously, you're 22 right now.
Yes, I believe that.
I had no idea. Okay, well, just had to throw that in. I thought you were telling a story. You're really 22. Wow.
Yes, 22 and a half. But if we could turn back the clock to when I was an undergrad, one of the things that I think that should have happened before I left grad school and even undergrad was there should have been a confidence elective. Because, when I came out, one of the things that I didn't know was how much I was worth, because confidence and value go hand in hand. And so I took the first job I could. I was broke for a long time, just struggling, trying to get by. Ramen noodles was becoming my new normal, because I didn't know what I was worth. I had no idea what my degree was worth, what my previous experiences were worth. It took a long time for me to be able to become solid in my own skin. So I just think that these are things that are changing in the marketplace. Long gone are the days where it's just a resume and who you know. It's about how you effectively communicate your value and your unique value proposition to the world.
Yeah, well, absolutely. Confidence is everything. And being able to be a pitch woman, a pitch man, and do that for the product of you. I think there's a lot still on the table to flesh out potentially in the future on that. But right now, Talk Universe, it is time in just a moment for the Blitz round. So we're going to talk to Carol more in just a moment. See you over there. And it's time for the Blitz round with Carol Sankar. I'm going to ask her a series of either-or questions related to the preparation and performance of her recent talk. Carol, are you ready?
I'm ready.
First question, were you invited to speak or did you apply?
I was invited.
Are you a memorizer? Are you an improviser or a blender?
I think I'm a blender.
How does that work for you?
I memorize a lot of my speeches, but then I don't know, when I get on stage, I start improvising because sometimes the audience makes me change into being able to, when you see reactions of people, you start changing and pushing in things and putting some anecdotes in there.
Now, what's a tip, tool, or technique that helped you?
Looking at the clock. I know this sounds odd, but I knew how long my talk was. And so what I did was I gave myself 2-minute talk times. So 2 minutes, and then I would hit my hand. It's just a tapping mechanism. And when I saw the clock say 2 or 1:59, click my hand. I should be into my next transition. 2, click my hand. So I kept looking at the clock without people knowing I was looking at it, so that I knew that every 2 minutes I should be effectively either hitting a pain point or making them smile or making some type of emotional gesture to be able to transition, because I knew that the talk was time.
Yeah, I've heard those touch points referred to as payoffs. So anytime that there's a shift in the dynamic, maybe you make them cry, then you make them laugh, then you make them curious, then you make them wistful or something like that. Anytime you can shift the energy purposefully and focused is a great way to do that. So you would actually physically tap yourself every 2 minutes to
I just have a way. I just do my hand in the talk. You can't see, but I was doing my hand like that to remind myself: new emotion, new segment of the talk, new emotion, new segment of the talk. So it just reminded me, okay, I made them laugh, I made them smile, I made them go and then now it's about to come in for the finish.
Now, when Carol says tapping, she's not doing this to lower the stress in front of everybody. Not that kind of tapping.
To remind myself, it's just a reminder that you've had effectively 120 seconds. Something has to happen, because you don't want it to be going on too long without something happening.
My next question: what was the most unexpected, strange, or just plain weird thing that happened during or right before your talk, Carol?
Ironically, right before the talk. So the night before I gave my TED talk, I learned that there was going to be a snowstorm in New York State. I gave mine upstate New York, and I live in North Carolina. So imagine, it was 80 degrees here when I left, and it was about 50, and they were expecting 3 feet of snow where I was going. So I had taken a flight the flight had to be diverted to DC. And then I ran to the first rental car place I could, and they were like, "This is not a good idea." And I'm like, "I got to give this talk tomorrow. I am not concerned with weather." And I drove it. Normally, I've driven to Rochester a ton of times. It normally takes 10 hours. It was an 18-hour day. And I got there in just this amount of time to hit. So when people saw me on stage, they were like, "You made it?" I was like, "Yeah, I was going to make this."
All right. So you can't see this because I'm not going to jack up the audio, but I am given the slow clap. I've never given a slow clap to anybody before here on Be the Talk. So 3 feet of snow. You live in North Carolina, and it was Rochester. So you got lake effect snow going on, and you drove after your flight 18 hours from DC to Rochester, New York, which would be an absolute nightmare trip, even with no snow.
No, well, normally you just drive up 77, but what ended up happening is I started with 1 inch, and then eventually you saw 7 inches, and then the closer you got into Pennsylvania, it became a foot, and I have a ton of pictures from it. The entire drive, by the time I reached Binghamton, that's when it was going sideways, and I'm just like, I'm persistent. I'm just driving at 10 miles an hour. It was getting close to midnight. The talk was at 7 a.m., so it was like close to midnight. And I'm like, I'm still going at it. I'm just going to get there. I wasn't going to visit
through the night.
I had to, because
word.
my flight was supposed to go directly to Rochester, but it was canceled. But I was going to make it, and I made it.
All right. Well, wow, powerful stuff. What was the most painful part of your talk to cut out? Not the whole thing, not because you showed up in the nick of time, but in your preparation, what was the most painful part that you knew you had to cut out?
I think the thing that I wanted to talk about was just, some experiences I had in the workplace with regard to confidence, and I wanted to talk more about my experiences, and I had to cut that out for the sake of time. And because I was getting so much of an emotional reaction to where we were going in the talk, I realized that if I had put that in, I would have changed the emotion once more. So it was a little painful not to share more about who I was. But when you have 8 minutes, you kind of realize that some things just got to come out.
18 hours for 8 minutes on stage. Carol Sankar, we've been enjoying this conversation with her. Her talk is called The Confidence Factor for Women. And if you like this conversation, you want to watch that talk, you can do so on YouTube, or you can go to bethetalk.com. We'll have a link right there. And you can also go to carolsankar.com and visit her speaking page. We'll have a link to that on the show notes page as well. And we'll be back in just a moment with the final word of advice from Carol Sankar. And we're back with the final word of advice from Carol Sankar.
Just be yourself and be confident. Believe in yourself more than anything. I think my main word of advice is no matter how fearful you are, that's a GPS of things that you're supposed to do. So the more fear you've got, it's actually supposed to lead you to the thing that you're supposed to be doing at this point.
Carol Sankar, thank you so much for coming on the talk today and sharing your wisdom with Talk Universe.
Thank you for having me.
All right, that's a wrap.
Thank you.
My
Thank
gosh,
you.
so the talk was in Binghamton, or was it Rochester? Or
it was in Rochester.
It was in Rochester.
Yeah.
But you drove to Binghamton, which is kind of to the east of Rochester.
It was just the way that the snow was going that it was not as bad on the eastern side of New York.
So you actually curved around to get around the lake.
I had to do what I had to do. I just knew I was going to. And they weren't canceling, so I was like, I gotta get there.
They're not canceling because that's normal life in Rochester on Lake Ontario.
Not normal life where I live. So I'm like, okay, I left home with a sweatsuit and some shorts and flip flops, and I had to get there. There was no option, so I got there. And I think I literally got there an hour before a short time.
All right, ladies, I brought you up back in here. What do you think of this heroic drive?
I love it. I'm sitting here cheering you on. I'm like, yes, of course you did it. Of course you got the car and drove up. No is not an option in this case.
No is not an option. I've done so much in my lifetime already. Like, some snow is not going to kill me. I'm going to be okay. Even if I had to push the talk back to the end, I was going to get there. It wouldn't matter. I kept calling. I'm like, no, don't worry. I'm on the way. I'm on exit 198. I'll be there. Don't worry. I'll be there.
Oh, my word. Well, great. All right. Well, any advice to Jody, who I think is last up here?
Have fun. Have fun.
Good deal.
Thank you.
All right.
Great talk, Carol.
We're going to escort you back to the green room. Thank you so much, Carol. Oh, my gosh. That's amazing. Jody, how are you?
I'm doing great, Nathan. Thanks for having me.
Great. I have a question, and if you can't do that, that's perfectly okay. We'll do as is. I'm seeing your background in beautiful detail. It looks absolutely beautiful out there. I'm not seeing your face as well.
Okay, do you want me to pull the blinds? Hold on a second.
That would be great, or you could pivot I
could pivot to a different wall.
Yeah, that would be fine.
Is this better?
That would be fine. Yes.
Okay.
Now I can see actually your head is blocking the window, which is great. And now I can see your face.
There we go. Okay, great.
So sometimes just little things
absolutely
make a difference. I don't want to be talking to like Shadow Woman or
yes. Thank you. Thank you. I like this look better too.
You're welcome. I like it. You look fine. Let's do. Oh, I got to do the little do-si-do and be on the left. So we're gonna travel to the green room. I'll put you right back on here, and we'll get on this in just. Okay, we switch sides. I have this thing where I have to be on the left here. All right, Jody, step outside the outer limits of your comfort zone, jodybmiller.com. Jody Miller is the CEO of C2C Strategic Management. She is a career and life coach, keynote speaker, best-selling author, and corporate strategist. She is known as the work happiness expert. And you've got the Amazon link for your book right there, which we can include. Any corrections or questions for me? Am I doing that okay?
Everything sounds great.
Awesome. All right. Well, good. Let's do this. Look at our levels. If you can give me a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
All right. We are ready to rock in 3, 2. We are live with Jody Miller. Jody, are you ready to talk?
I sure am. Thanks, Nathan.
Jody Miller is the CEO of C2C Strategic Management. Jody's a career and life coach, a keynote speaker, a best-selling author, and corporate strategist. She is known as the work happiness expert. Jody Miller, welcome to the talk.
Thank you so much, Nathan.
Your talk is called Step Outside the Outer Limits of Your Comfort Zone. And your talk is about this interesting new concept called Mitsugi.
Misogi, actually.
Misogi, excuse me. Yeah.
That's okay.
Mitsugi. And basically a cold water purification ritual where the cold water comes, it washes away the old you, and your body generates new heat, symbolizing the new you. And you talk about that as kind of a metaphor for what we need to do to thrive in our work life. I'd love for you to take us behind the talk.
Sure. So I came up with the Misogi method concept because I felt in life and a lot of my work with corporations, and I actually come from the corporate world myself. I had a career in television, investment banking, and I had a software company. So I've been sort of on both sides of the table. And I realized that through life, I've met many people that really hadn't done what they wanted to do in life. And so a lot of people were saying, is this all there is? And so I found that really spoke to my heart, and I started to do more research on ways that people could get outside the outermost limits of their comfort zone. I mean, if you go on and you hear about comfort zone talks, you always say, here's your comfort zone and here's where the magic happens, right? We've all seen that graphic. This is a little different. This is taking a big reach and taking a leap that's so big that it really has to have a 50% or greater chance of failure. That's basically how the whole Misogi has evolved over the centuries. And I'm talking about it all over the world. I go into companies, I challenge people to get that far outside their comfort zone, and then I show them how to do it. And so that's really what my talk was about. And I actually started a podcast after that. And maybe you'll be on mine. I have about 24 episodes so far. So,
congratulations! So, really, it sounds like the real pivot point, the tipping point, if you will, is getting 51% outside your comfort zone. If I heard that correctly.
Sure, it has to be something that you're very scared about, yet you're very excited about, and you'll know if you stop and really listen to your heart. You'll know when you have your Misogi. And the fun thing was, after my TEDx talk, I did mine in Dallas. I had a line of people. I was blown away. A line of people, every age, coming up to me saying, I think I know what my Misogi is. And in particular, I loved this one couple. The woman says, I'm going to climb Mount Kilimanjaro. And the husband says, oh, you're crazy. And I said, that's great. That is your Misogi. And then I looked at him and I said, how about you? And he said, oh, I don't really have anything. And so we got into his background and realized that he liked to read. So we came up with a Misogi of him reading 1,000 books in a year. And we figured out a way he could do it by reading book summaries and listening to audiobooks. And he left there totally jazzed. So yeah, it was really kind of fun. That was my favorite couple that came up to me afterwards.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, maybe for some of us, it's jumping off one of these corporate obstacle courses with the ropes and all of that kind of thing. I mean, there really is a visceral. Is this really what we're getting at? That visceral feeling like you're about to rappel for charity off the side of a skyscraper or something like that. That absolutely almost paralyzes you. Yet you will yourself to do it anyway. Is that kind of a piece that we're going after here? Absolutely,
Nathan. And it doesn't have to be a physical feat. Although like Kyle Korver, for example, he's an NBA basketball player. He was a very good three-pointer before a lot of people passed him, and he did a Masogi, and he wanted to break the record for the most 3-pointers in the most games in a row, and he did it. And that was his Masogi. So that's a physical one. But for me, when I did my big Masogi, I did a few, and I spoke about them in my TED Talk. But for me, I had to figure out who I was again after a long-term marriage that I left. And so I went and lived in the Amazon with a tribe. That was scary for me because I had a heart condition, and there are no doctors, just medicine men. And anyway, if you listen to my talk, you'll learn a little bit more about that.
Yeah, well, I heard that, and very, very interesting. And I mean, from one person to another, I've done a little bit of humanitarian work for a couple of weeks in Africa off the grid. Sure. What was that experience of just being off the grid, and the added factor, no small thing, of having this condition? Why did you decide to go through with it, and what was it like?
Well, it scared me. Number one, it had a big chance of failure because I hate to fly. And you're on this little tiny plane that 3 people squish in, and you're bumping over lots of forest, and there are only little strips of dirt that you can land on. And then all of a sudden you're surrounded by all these people that are mostly naked when you get off the plane, and you go, what am I doing? So it was very scary for me for many reasons, not just the heart condition, but my heart condition had been fixed, but I had medication just in case. So I felt like that was good. My heart doctor gave me the clearance. So I thought, okay, if anything goes wrong, I have some medication if I flip out or something. So once I got on the journey, Nathan, it was exhilarating. I mean, we were getting up at 3 a.m. to do ceremonies. It was life. It was transformational for me. No technology. I did the ayahuasca ceremony, and I've never done anything but maybe have a little sip of wine. So that was really transformative, and it changed me. All right, what
did you drink? Because if it sounds like that was a little more potent than wine. I'm not. I have an idea where I think you're going with this, but I'm going to make you say it.
Sure. Well, I'll tell you.
What did you drink?
Absolutely. Okay, so it tastes like mud, and basically the process is that the shaman of the tribe leaves for 2 days, and he creates this ayahuasca out of the ayahuasca plant and another plant. And if anything crosses his path he has to go back and start all over again. It's very ritual, and it's a really sacred ceremony. So when that's done, he comes back, and at about midnight, we all sit around in a circle and we drink about a 1/4 cup of this. And then you have to throw it up or you could die. So it's pretty it's pretty significant. And of course I did. I threw it up like 80 times, and there are lots of people watching you, and then you start to see things. So it's a natural hallucinogenic, actually. It was amazing, the things I saw while I was wide awake. Just fascinating. But the coolest part is that there was this little creature next to me throughout the whole process, and you're able to ask the shaman one question the next day, and you go through interpreters. And I explained this creature that wouldn't leave. And I knew it wasn't real, yet I kept saying, well, go on, go back home to your mommy, And he said that was Mother Earth telling me I am okay. I have no reason to fear. I am safe. I will always be watched over. And that's what I needed to hear to move into the next chapter of my life. So it was really great.
So now this is my little legal disclaimer. Do not necessarily follow anything that we talk about here on Be the Talk. And I am not a physician. I'm not a health, and I neither confirm nor deny, and et cetera, et cetera.
Me too. I'm not a doctor either. This is just what I chose.
All right. So we kind of had to say that. Now, my next question is, what were you able to accomplish as a result, perhaps, of going through this very, very colorful experience that you just told us about?
Well, I just started to tap into the creative side of me. I came from a very strong corporate background, as I mentioned, and that was what I did. I followed that corporate path, but really deep inside of me, when I took the Myers-Briggs, I'm right in the middle. I'm like half introvert, half extrovert. I'm both left and right brain, and I have this creative side of me. I've been writing, and I produced a song that was on the radio many years ago, and I've won poetry contests, that sort of thing. And I've written a few books, corporate books, but I decided that it was time to write this book called Drift to Shift that ended up being a bestseller. And it's all about stories of people who've broken through these like huge barriers in their lives to achieve meaning, success, and happiness that actually lasts. And then the Masogi method sort of came out of that, and then the podcast. And now I speak about it all over the world. In fact, I just got back last night from a conference in Florida, and we talked about getting outside your comfort zone in the corporate workplace. And we did some fun stuff there too. So it was great.
Your talk is extremely well viewed. It's got over 500,000 views right now. So
yes.
The best-selling book, that came before the talk, or,
yes.
or what
yes.
do you think was a factor in that?
Actually, it came out it was already in the works, but I finished it. So it kind of came out right after, but it did really well. And now I'm actually working on the Misogi method, the first book in a series. And eventually I'd love to turn that into the Misogi method of everything, like chicken soup for the soul kind of thing, because there is a Misogi method for everything: relationships, success, money, finding what you're meant to do in life. And so that's sort of my next big Misogi, is to create this series of books and, help the world as much as I can.
Well, we've been enjoying this conversation with Jody Miller. Her talk is called Step Outside the Outer Limits of Your Comfort Zone. And congratulations, Jody, from the stories that you're telling us. You have certainly achieved that. And we are going to pivot over to you, Talk Universe, because we're going to talk more about the preparation to the stage. And we're going to do that just in a moment in the Blitz Round. And we're back with Jody Miller. It is time for the Blitz Round. I'm about to ask Jody a series of either-or questions related to the preparation and performance of her recent talk. Jody, are you ready?
I'm ready.
First question, were you invited to speak or did you apply?
I applied. The reason I applied is that I needed to find the right theme for my talk, because it was sort of a unique talk. And so I found this venue in Dallas, and their theme was tabula rasa, which means blank slate. And I thought, this is exactly, because when you go through this experience, it is a new blank slate. And we just hit it off, and it was just a wonderful experience. Yeah.
Well, any advice to people that are trying to get accepted right now? What did you do to get accepted?
So I think you need to look at, first of all, get your idea. And then I'm a big believer in applying to the venue that fits your talk, where you can add the most value. And so I was almost going to do one in Palo Alto, and I thought that didn't fit. I was going to do one in New Jersey. I was invited Wilmington. I was invited on several, but I really felt like the one in Dallas fit the most. So look for the venue that fits you, number one. And number two, I'm a big believer in the standard TEDx talk. So there's standard, there's salon, there's university, but I'm a big believer in standard because that's right under TED. So, you have to be Bill Gates or the Dalai Lama to really get a TED talk. But for TEDx, standard is the next level, or I consider it, the broadest level of the TEDx stage.
Wow. So you researched, it sounded like you got accepted at a number of places, but you were looking for that niche, that kind of soul connection with the theme that was happening. So
yes,
congratulations.
That's my advice, because I think you'll be happier with the experience if you do that.
Okay. So are you a memorizer? Are you an improviser, or are you a blender?
When it comes to a TEDx talk, I'm a memorizer. I didn't use any slides. Just for those of you who are considering going for a TEDx talk, slides are not really encouraged, or maybe one or two of the pictures. So I didn't use any. And I'm a big proponent of that, because people are going to read what's behind you versus looking at you. So I'm a memorizer with the TEDx talk, but the talk I just gave in Florida was 50 minutes, and I had bullet points and slides. But I really just improvised, but I had my bullet points, and I really connected with the audience. So it really depends. But for a TEDx talk, I definitely recommend memorizing.
Well, yeah, and it's funny because you're referencing the official TED method a lot. Here's the Chris Anderson curator book that really talks about his term presentation literacy. And really, presentation literacy, it's about being able to spread that idea without the crutches that a lot of corporate presenters use: PowerPoint slides, bullet points, things like that. And so I really appreciate what you did to just get out there and let the talk speak for itself. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, and also, Nathan, I just wanted to add that gives you the opportunity to read your audience and connect with your audience. So I had eye contact. I had hundreds of people in the audience, and I had eye contact with everyone. And I was able to use pauses, which are very, very important in your talk. And because I knew it cold, I was able to flow with my audience. So if there was humor and they laughed, I could wait. I could walk around the stage. They allowed us to do that with this venue. And I just felt like I was very, very connected to the audience because I knew it. And so I recommend memorizing.
Yeah. Well, my next question, what was the most unexpected, strange, or just plain weird thing that happened before or during your talk?
Yeah, this is a big one. The sound didn't work from the sound booth. So when you listen to my talk, you have to listen for a few seconds before you get used to it. And I, for some reason, had a couple 100,000 views right away. I have a publicity firm because of all my books, and I write for a lot of magazines, and I've been on TV and radio and such. So I had a lot of visibility right away. But then the organizers came back and said, we found a way to fix the sound. Do you want us to fix yours? And I said, no, this is what happened.
100,000 hits.
Yeah, it would have gone back to zero. And I felt like that's just what happened. And so I'm a big believer in going with the flow. And when opportunities come, take them and figure it out later. And so it's a very real talk, and I'm happy with it.
Well, Talk Universe, Jody went there. She opened the door. So I am so happy that she did, because I was very curious about this, because I review and I watch everybody's talk, and I'm like, how does this talk that the sound is it's kind of not amplified. It's kind of like
a little more echo. Yeah.
It's like a normal 10 years ago phone recorder sound quality. And yet it's got 500,000 views.
Yeah.
And I just kind of I didn't want to pry so much, but Jody opened the door for us. So,
sure.
Maybe your publicity firm has a few new openings for some of Talk Universe. They're probably not cheap, I would imagine.
Well, Nathan, it's really what your message is.
Yeah.
I think it's your message. And if it resonates with people, it doesn't matter really how it's delivered. I mean, a lot of writers and emails you get sometimes are just text. And they're very interesting. And a good friend of mine I interviewed on my podcast, very successful entrepreneur, does this email every week, and it's just text. And it has, I don't know, he might be up to 1 million people subscribing by now, because it's just really good. So I don't know. I think it's your message.
Powerful. Well, I agree with you. And we've been enjoying our conversation in the Blitz round with Jody Miller. If you want to check out this intriguing talk, great message. Message is way better than the quality of the sound, as we talked about. You can go to YouTube. Her talk is called Step Outside the Outer Limits of Your Comfort Zone, or you can go to our show notes page at bethetalk.com. We'll have a link right there. We will also have a link to jodybmiller.com, Jody with a Y, the letter B as in brother, Miller.com. And we will be back in just a moment for the final word of advice with Jody Miller. We're back. It's time for the final word of advice. What is it, Jody?
Well, if you're going to go for a TEDx talk, I just say to you, why not you? I always said, why not me? I've always said that my whole life. And that is my advice to you. Why not you? Go for it. Take a chance. So what if they say no? They might say yes.
Talk Universe, why not you? Jody Miller, thank you so much for coming on the talk today and sharing your wisdom with us.
Thank you, Nathan. I really enjoyed our conversation.
And that's a wrap. Wasn't that fun?
That was fun. Thanks, Nathan.
I think you get the award for most colorful story in the middle of a interview that I have to put a disclaimer on right afterwards. I see these images of my listeners going into their yard and picking up mushrooms, or
hopefully they won't.
whatever they're going to scrounge for. Oh my gosh, we didn't go here, but it was like, how does one go into the Amazon? Did they kick you out of a plane, or what?
Well, I went with an organization.
We're still broadcasting this because
sorry.
This is just too good. No, I'm asking just so that don't say anything,
sure.
on Facebook Live here.
Yeah, sure. I went with an organization because I didn't want to just do it by myself. I went with 9 women I'd never met before, but it was very much a personal experience. And so I would recommend, don't just go to these places that do ayahuasca in the States and just do it. I would not recommend that. I would recommend, go for whatever your experience is, whether you want to go in the Amazon or go to Peru or go to Africa or whatever it is, and then just, see what unfolds from there.
Well, great. Carol, Elatia, any thoughts for Jody? This is quite a story here today.
You're more brave than I am.
I don't know. You are the confidence woman. I totally get, and I resonated with you on that. That was really great.
You're much more brave than I am. First of all, to go to the Amazon in itself is just a trip. I don't know. I would never thought of that. But the experience, you're just more brave than I am.
I don't know about that, but for me, it was the right thing.
Yeah, it definitely is. It resonates a lot because sometimes you have that moment, you got to do something new. You got to get out of your own way and just try something new. And I like the fact that you said you didn't even like to fly.
Yeah.
But you did it anyway.
I did it anyway.
Fear and do it. Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of magic in doing the things that we are afraid of. And one of the things that we were talking about earlier on in our conversation about exercising this muscle of resilience.
Yes.
And being out there beyond what is comfortable, it is sure it's as you were saying, it's the whole graphic and out here is your comfort zone. But the more we can put ourselves into situations where we are practicing that resilience, the easier the transition thanks to technology and other things coming down the pike is going to be.
So true. And I do this in companies too when I do workshops, but by the end everyone's hugging because I make them bring their authentic self to the table, not, their corporate self. And so that in and of itself takes people way outside their comfort zone because most people don't have the confidence, as you were mentioning, Carol, or aren't really their authentic selves in the office. And so it's a sort of a mini misogi, I call it.
Well, cool. Well, we're going to wrap this up. Thank you all on Facebook Live for joining us and tolerating the pause that we have in here. Eventually, I'm going to chop up this video. It'll be a little bit more accessible. For those of you that are in Jody's fan club, Elatia's fan club, Carol's fan club, again, wiggle your finger like the creepy kid from The Shining over the share button so that Facebook will not be able to overcome the throttling and will overcome the sharing of your messages. We really want to help everyone spread their ideas even more. No matter if you have 500,000 views or anywhere south of that, we all have more people to impact in the world, and we want to encourage you to do that. That's it for today. Thanks, everybody, and we're going to take this offline. So I'll wave goodbye, and we'll see you offline.
Thanks so much.